My name is Peter, and welcome to another video about the sailing vessel Silverheels, my Rhodes 22. In this video, we're going to be dealing exclusively with the topic of attaching a whisker pole to the boat. I've never sailed with a whisker pole, but I've been doing research on it, and it seems like a pretty good idea. So a lot of the reading I've been doing has been on the Rhodes 22 email forum, and there's quite a bit of information out there, so thanks to everyone who's contributed to that knowledge base over the years. This is the unit that's most commonly recommended for installation on the Rhodes 22. It's a 4-spar unit is the brand. It will adjust from about 6 feet to about 12 feet in length. 4-spar actually makes a couple of units with this length configuration, but this is the heavier duty model, and its model number is 406300. So the first issue we need to contend with is how to attach this to the boat. One end of the pole obviously gets attached to the forward edge of the mast someplace, and the other end gets attached to the jib sheet. And the approach some people take, which is obviously the most simple approach, is to just mount it fixed eye someplace on the forward edge of the mast. But to do that, you have to be confident that you know the correct position for that to be mounted, and well, I don't have personally confidence that I know that. So we want some degree of adjustability, so we're going with the track and car option, and really a pretty short piece of track would serve just that purpose. But I also, for reasons of how I want to store the mast, whisker pole, when it's not being used, I have actually a 10-foot piece of 1-inch wide track here. And both the track, by the way, and the pole came from Defender, mostly because I live about an hour away from them, so I didn't have to worry about how to get these items shipped to me. I could just drive down and pick them up, which was convenient. So, to attach the track to the mast, we're going to use screws, machine screws. These are 1/4-inch diameter, 28 threads per inch, and a total of 1/2 inch long. And one of these will go in each of the 31 holes in the track. So we'll need to drill and tap the mast for those. So I've got a reference guide that tells me the proper size drill bit for this is 7/32. So the approach is going to be, we're going to put the first screw about a foot above the deck, and then we're going to mount the track and use the track itself as a template for placing the rest of the holes for the screws. And to help us make sure those holes are all centered, we're going to use this self-centering bit. This is actually a bit that's sized for number 6 screws. But as it happens, the centering nose piece is pretty precisely 1/4 inch, so it'll just fit into the hole. So we're going to drill a kind of a pilot or starter hole with that, and then come back with a larger bit to drill the full-size hole, and then we'll tap that for the 1/4-inch by 28 threads per inch threads. Because the mast is aluminum and the screws are stainless steel, we have the incompatible metals issue. There'll be corrosion over time, and if you don't treat things, then they're very hard to get apart later. So we've got some goop that also came from Defender that's supposed to address this incompatible metals issue, and we'll be putting a dollop of that on each of the screws as we install them. So I did a little testing using just a piece of 1/8" aluminum stock that I had hanging around the shop, and that came out pretty well. Seems pretty straightforward, so confidence is high. We're having a rainy day today, so to allow us to get some work done anyway, we've moved the mast to a covered breezeway here, so we should be able to stay dry, but it is a little dim in here. So I suppose in theory attaching the track to the mast could be done with the mast in a vertical orientation, but we've decided this is going to be a lot easier, so we're going to do this. So one of the things, I'm not sure is going to show up, that's going to make this a little easier than it might otherwise be, is the IMF mast has this nice little indentation, almost like a seam. I'm sure it's not, right up the center of the forward edge. So that's useful for some of our alignment. So we'll start by making our first hole. As I said, aim is to put that about a foot from the bottom. So we've made a little mark where we want the first screw to go, and the first one is kind of free form, but to keep the drill bit from wandering around, we'll use a nail set and try to make a little indentation there. And then we'll drill that. And then we'll tap that hole. And then we'll put on some of our anti-seize goop. And no, I didn't practice that ahead of time. I should have. And then screw that home. Next we'll do the screw at the other end of the track, and we'll use our centering bit. Perfect for the initial hole. And then our full-sized hole. And then our tap. And finally, our screw. Okay then, so far so good. Only 29 more to go. So that took about an hour to put in the 31 screws in the track, and for good measure, we added a stop at the top, so that's a 32nd screw. And we tested our car, and it slides along rather nicely. So we need to add some components that will allow us to control this car. So we're going to need a line to control the up-down motion of the car, and that needs to run up the mast along the track. And the way we're going to route this is we're going to use fair leads, a total of 4 of them. So we'll mount one just slightly off the center line, and then another one a little way from that, just far enough away to get the line away from the track and the car, and then the line will come up like that. And there'll be 2 more of these at the top, of course. The hope is here that this will introduce, well, not enough friction to make it difficult to move the car up and down, but enough friction so that it won't tend to move on its own. This is a theory I got out of a Lynn and Larry party. Both Lynn talks about the setup on, I forget which one of their boats, but it worked out well for them, so here's hoping it'll work for us. Well, it's the next day now, and it's no longer raining, and it's a little bit warmer. And we have some good news and some bad news to report. The good news is I tried out the theory of running the line through the 4 fair leads and to both ends of the towable car, and found with the first rope I tried it with that will work. I then tried it with another rope, which is just a little thicker, it's 1/4 inch, and less flexible, and there was too much resistance for that to work. So the answer is this will seem to work with the right line. If this didn't work at all, the answer would be to go to using cheek blocks and some kind of cleat arrangement to allow the car to move and then be immobilized. But on the bad news side, these 2 fair leads are mounted too close to the end of the track so that I can't remove the car. So we'll have to move those down a little bit, and there'll be some extra holes in the mast. So we've moved our 2 lower fair leads down far enough that we can get the car off if we want to. Some people have suggested that it's useful to be able to do that when you're moving the boat on land. So take the mast down, the whole thing. And we've attached a rope, so pulling on the rope can move the car. And that's about all we can do until we put the mast back on the boat, and there's a couple other projects that need to get done before we do that. So we'll be back in a bit. Having completed a few other chores, we were able to put the mast up on the boat and take the next steps in attaching our whisker pole. So we've attached the upper end of the whisker pole to the towable car, and the lower end to another car that has a pin that'll go in the holes in the track, so it can be moved, but otherwise doesn't slide. And we borrowed that temporarily from the side track for the jib sheet as a proof of concept. Now, you may be wondering why I've got all that extra track up there that's not being used, and that's so I can slide the entire whisker pole up so that it won't interfere with the pop top enclosure which wraps around the mast. We've taken a couple of additional steps in rigging the mast. We've got a topping lift which is using one of the 2 sheaves at the top of the IMF mast. The other one, of course, is used for the boom topping lift. So this will support the outboard end of the whisker pole. And we've also run a line between the 2 lanyards that open the jaws of the whisker pole. And that has slack in it now, of course, because the pole is collapsed, but will be tight when the pole is fully opened. So, due to my anal retentive nature, I want to rig the whisker pole in the way a big boat would do it. So in addition to the topping lift, I want a fore-guy and an after-guy. But another thing that I hope to accomplish is, since I try not to go out on deck when I'm underway, I'd like to be able to rig this entirely from within the cabin. So I'll show you how I think this is going to work. It would be much harder to show if the boat was in the water, but I think I can show you now. So while standing here in the cabin, I've rigged the fore-guy and after-guy. I'm using dock lines here at the moment because I haven't bought, probably 1/4-inch line will do for this. So the next thing we need to do is disconnect. If we can find the lanyard, there it is. Disconnect the lower end. I should note that we're going to deploy the pole between the forward lower shroud and the upper shroud on the port side. And so we've run the fore-guy around the forward lower shroud, the aft guy around the upper shroud and back. And the forward guy goes up and around the bow cleat, and I'm able to do that with the boat hook. So now we can begin to lower the upper end of the whisker pole, and the topping lift will hold up the outer end. Forgot something. So what we need to do next is to take the sheet, the jib sheet, and put it in the jaws of the pole. And now we can continue to lower the upper end of the pole until we get it down where we can reach it. Then disconnect the inner end and extend the pole and reattach it to the mast. And then we can adjust the level of the pole, and then we can tighten our guys. So there's our deployed whisker pole. I could, what would happen next is we'd pull on the jib sheet to pull out the jib, but the wind is blowing in the wrong direction, so we won't do that at the moment. Note that the outer jaws are facing down, and that is so a tug on the lanyard will release the jib sheet. Like that. So that's really about all we can do in terms of proof of concept for the whisker pole idea. And so far so good, but the proof of the pudding will have to be in the sailing. And well, the boat should be launched soon, and we'll look for excuses to sail close to downwind and see how it works out. And we'll be sure to make a video about that as well. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.